Ever wondered what prompt engineering is? It's like being a translator between humans and machines, but instead of different human languages, we're dealing with the language of artificial intelligence. You see, AI language models like GPT-3 don't naturally understand human language. They need a little nudge in the right direction, and that's where prompt engineering comes in. Imagine you're an artist and your paintbrush is a language model like GPT-3. Your canvas, the vast, unending expanse of human conversation. As a prompt engineer, your job is to guide this paintbrush, crafting prompts that help the model understand what's being asked of it and how to respond. It's like telling the paintbrush not just where to stroke, but what colors to use, and even what picture to paint. So, in essence, prompt engineering is about making machines understand and respond in the language we humans speak. It's about bridging the gap between human thought and machine intelligence. Now that you know what prompt engineering is, you might be wondering how many techniques there are. Well, the world of prompt engineering is vast and filled with a variety of approaches, each with its own unique style and application. Let's start with the simplest form of prompt, the direct question. This is where you ask the model a straightforward question. For instance, you might ask, who was the first person to walk on the moon? The model, having been trained on a wide range of data, is likely to respond correctly with Neil Armstrong. This technique is as straightforward as it gets, but it's effective for retrieving factual information. Next up, we have the scenario setting. This technique involves painting a detailed picture or setting a specific context for the model. For example, instead of asking, "What's the weather like?" you might say, "Imagine you're a weather reporter in London on a typical rainy day. Describe the weather." This encourages the model to provide a more descriptive and creative response, as it's now operating within a specific context. Then there's the technique of suggestion, where you subtly guide the model towards the desired response. For instance, if you want the model to write a poem about spring, you might prompt it with, "Imagine you're a famous poet inspired by the blooming flowers and chirping birds of spring." This nudges the model in the right direction without explicitly stating what you want. And finally, we have the systematic prompt, which involves a series of prompts that guide the model through a more complex task. For instance, if you want the model to write a short story, you might start with a prompt setting the scene, followed by prompts introducing characters, developing the plot, and so forth. Each technique has its own strengths and weaknesses, and the choice of which to use depends on the specific task at hand. Some tasks might require a simple direct question, while others might benefit from a more elaborate scenario setting or a systematic series of prompts. Whether simple or complex, each technique has its uniqueness and is chosen based on the kind of response we need from the machine. So keep exploring and don't be afraid to experiment with different techniques to get the most out of your models. Now let's bring in ChatGPT into the conversation. How can we use prompt engineering with it? Well, it's a fascinating process. Think of it as giving a nudge, a direction to an AI model like ChatGPT to get the desired output. You see, when you're interacting with ChatGPT, you're essentially providing it with a prompt. This prompt is the input that the model uses to generate a response. But here's where prompt engineering comes into play. It's not just about giving the model a prompt, it's about giving it the right prompt. Let's illustrate this with an example. Suppose you want ChatGPT to write an essay for you. You could just tell it to write an essay, but that's too vague, isn't it? The model could write about anything, and you might not get the result you were hoping for. So, instead, you set the context. You give it a title and some guiding points. You might say, write an essay titled, "The Impact of Climate Change," with points on causes, effects, and solutions. Now that's a well-engineered prompt. You've given the model a clear direction and it knows exactly what you're looking for. The result? A well-structured essay on climate change, just as you desired. You asked ChatGPT to write an essay, but you also guided it on what that essay should be about. You've effectively used prompt engineering with ChatGPT. Remember, the key to successful prompt engineering is being specific and clear. The more context and direction you provide, the better the model can fulfill your request. It's a bit like teaching a child to paint. You don't just hand them a brush and expect a masterpiece. You guide them, show them the technique, and then let their creativity flow. That's how you can use prompt engineering to make ChatGPT write an essay or perform any other language-based task. It's like teaching a machine to communicate just the way we humans do.